Have you ever been seen by someone who once loved you and watched their eyes turn into something unrecognizable? The night my sister saw me standing barefoot at the bus station, pregnant and alone, I thought I had already hit the lowest point of my life. The cold pavement burned through my feet. The wind cut through my thin jacket, and the weight of everything I had lost pressed harder than the child growing inside me. But nothing compared to the way she looked at me. Not with concern, not with shock, but with judgment. She didn't run to me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just stood there, staring, as if trying to decide whether I was worth stepping toward or walking away from. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. This was the beginning of something far worse. Because the truth about how I ended up there wasn't what anyone thought it was. And by the time they found out, it would already be too late. I hadn't planned to be at that station. Not like that. Not barefoot. Not shaking. Not carrying a suitcase that felt heavier with every step. Not because of what was inside it, but because of what it represented. Everything I had left. Everything I had managed to take before the door behind me closed for what I knew was the last time. The night air was colder than it should have been for that time of year. Or maybe it was just me. Maybe when your entire life collapses in a single evening. Your body forgets how to feel anything except shock. I remember standing there, staring at the flickering overhead light, trying to focus on something, anything, that didn't make me want to fall apart. The smell of gasoline, the distant hum of engines, the occasional footsteps of strangers passing by without even noticing me. I was invisible, just another woman at a bus station. Just another mistake waiting to disappear. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach, fingers pressing lightly as if to reassure myself that at least one thing in my life was still real, still mine. I whispered something I didn't even fully understand. It's going to be okay. But the words felt empty the moment they left my lips, because I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know anything anymore. Not about my life. Not about my future. And definitely not about the man I had just left behind. It had all happened so fast. Too fast for it to feel real. One moment, I was standing in the kitchen, holding onto the edge of the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The next, I was watching everything I believed in unravel in front of me, piece by piece. Word by word. Lie by lie. I should have seen it sooner. That was the thought that kept echoing in my head. There were signs. Of course there were signs. Late nights he couldn't explain. Calls he would step outside to take. That subtle shift in his voice whenever I asked simple questions. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just enough to make me feel like I was the one imagining things. And maybe that was the worst part. I trusted him enough to doubt myself. Even when something inside me whispered that something wasn't right, I buried it. I told myself I was overthinking. That stress could explain everything. That love meant believing, even when things didn't make sense. I didn't realize I wasn't protecting our marriage. I was protecting his lies. And by the time the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just break me. It exposed everything. The memory of that night replayed in fragments. A voice that didn't belong. A name I had never heard before. A conversation I was never supposed to overhear. I didn't need to see anything. I didn't need proof in the way people think they do. Sometimes, the truth doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in quietly. Undeniable. Settling into your chest like something that has always been there. Waiting for you to finally notice it. And once you do, there's no going back. I remember how still everything felt. How the world didn't shatter the way I thought it would. It just shifted. And suddenly, nothing looked the same anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just stood there, listening, letting the weight of every word sink into me until I couldn't pretend anymore. Until there was no version of reality left where everything was okay. That's when I knew I had to leave. Not tomorrow. Not after talking it through. Not after giving him a chance to explain something that couldn't be explained. That night, immediately. Because staying would mean accepting something I could never live with. And I had already lost too much. I didn't take much with me. A few clothes. Documents. Things I knew I might need if I didn't come back. I didn't even think about shoes. It sounds ridiculous now. But when you're trying to hold yourself together, you don't think about small things. You think about survival. About getting out before something inside you breaks completely. The door closed behind me with a sound that felt final. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. And somehow, that's how I ended up at that station. Alone. Pregnant. Barefoot. With no real plan except to keep moving forward. Even if I had no idea where forward was going to take me. I didn't expect to see anyone I knew. That was the last thing on my mind. But life has a way of choosing the worst possible moment to remind you that you're never as invisible as you think. I heard my name before I saw her. Sharp. Familiar. Unmistakable. Amanda. I froze. Slowly. I turned. And there she was. My sister. Standing just a few steps away. Looking at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And in that moment, I realized something even worse than everything I had already lost. The story they were going to believe about me had already begun. She didn't hug me. That was the first thing I noticed. My sister, someone who used to run toward me over the smallest things, just stood there, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like she was trying to make sense of something broken. Amanda, what happened to you? Her voice wasn't soft. It wasn't warm. It carried something sharp underneath it. Something that made my stomach tighten more than the cold ever could. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because how do you explain something you barely understand yourself? How do you put into words the moment your entire life collapses? When even you don't know where it all started to go wrong? I just needed to leave. I finally said, my voice quieter than I expected. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Leave, she repeated. Like the word didn't make sense. You look like you ran away. I swallowed hard, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach again. I could feel her gaze follow the movement. And for the first time, something flickered across her face. Not concern. Suspicion. How far along are you? She asked. The question hit harder than anything else. I hesitated for just a second too long. And she noticed. Are you serious right now? Her voice rose slightly. You're pregnant. Standing here barefoot in the middle of the night. And you're telling me you just needed to leave. A few people nearby turned their heads. But I didn't care. Or maybe I just didn't have the energy to. I didn't have a choice, I said, forcing the words out. There's always a choice, she snapped. Unless you did something you're not telling me. That stung more than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because of how quickly she assumed it. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for even a trace of the sister I knew, the one who used to defend me, who used to believe me without question. But she wasn't there. Or maybe she was just buried under something else, something heavier. Can we not do this here? I said quietly. She exhaled sharply, glancing around before shaking her head. Fine. Get in the car. I hesitated. Just for a second. Not because I didn't want to go with her, but because something inside me whispered that the moment I stepped into that car, everything would change again. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I nodded and followed her. The car ride was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels loaded. Like every second that passes is building toward something inevitable. She didn't turn on the radio. She didn't say anything. She just drove, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I stared out the window, watching the empty streets blur past, trying to ground myself in something familiar. But nothing felt familiar anymore. Not the city. Not my life. Not even the person sitting beside me. You're not going to tell me, are you? She said suddenly. I blinked, turning slightly toward her. Tell you what? What really happened? Her tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory. Like she had already decided there was something I was hiding. I told you, I said softly. I had to leave. That's not an explanation. Amanda. Her voice sharpened, and I could feel the tension building again. You don't just end up like this overnight? Pregnant. Alone. No shoes. No plan. That doesn't just happen. I stayed quiet. Because she was right. It didn't just happen. But explaining it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't change the way she was already looking at me. You know what people are going to say, right? She continued. I felt something inside my chest tighten. They're going to say you messed up. That you made a bad decision. That you ran instead of dealing with it like an adult. Each word landed heavier than the last. And honestly, she added, her voice dropping slightly, looking at you right now, I don't know how to argue with that. I turned back toward the window, blinking hard. Not because I was about to cry, but because I refused to let her see me break. Not now. Not in front of her. When we pulled up to her house, I felt that same hesitation again. That quiet voice telling me that stepping inside would mean stepping into something I couldn't undo. But the cold outside gave me no real choice. I followed her in. The warmth hit me immediately. But it didn't comfort me the way it should have. It felt foreign. Like I didn't belong in it anymore. She tossed her keys onto the table and turned to face me. Sit, she said. I lowered myself onto the couch, my body suddenly aware of how exhausted it really was. She stood across from me, arms crossed again. Start talking. I looked up at her. There it was again. Not concern. Not support. Expectation. Judgment. I told you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I left. And I'm telling you that's not enough. She shot back. What did he do? Or better question, what did you do? The words hung in the air between us. Sharp. Heavy. Unavoidable. Something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not yet. But something close to it. I didn't do anything, I said. More firmly this time. She let out a short laugh. But there was no humor in it. People don't end up like this for no reason. Amanda. I held her gaze. My heart pounding harder now. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't ruin anything. Then why are you here like this? Because the truth is ugly. Because the truth doesn't fit into the simple story you've already decided to believe. Because the truth would force you to question everything you think you know about me. But I didn't say any of that. I just looked at her and stayed silent. Her expression hardened. Unbelievable, she muttered, shaking her head. You expect me to help you when you won't even be honest with me? Help. That word felt distant, almost ironic, because nothing about this felt like help. It felt like a trial, and I was already being judged. I'm tired, I said finally. It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough. She stared at me for a moment longer, then let out a slow breath. Fine, she said. We'll talk in the morning. She turned away, already walking toward the hallway. But before she disappeared, she paused. And Amanda, I looked up. Her voice was colder now. You better figure out what you're going to say, because right now, nothing about this looks good for you. The door to her room closed softly behind her. And just like that, I was alone again, sitting in a house that should have felt safe, but didn't. Because for the first time, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. The night I left my husband wasn't the moment my life fell apart. It was just the moment everyone else started deciding who I was going to be. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on the couch with a thin blanket pulled over me, staring at the ceiling as the darkness slowly faded into the dull gray of early morning. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to stop. Every word my sister had said replayed in fragments, mixing with everything I had just lived through. It wasn't just what she said. It was how easily she believed it. Like the version of me standing barefoot at a bus station made more sense than the version she had known her entire life. I closed my eyes for a moment, pressing my hand gently against my stomach. I'm still here, I whispered. But even that felt uncertain now. I heard movement in the kitchen before I got up. Cabinets opening. A cup placed on the counter. The low hum of a coffee machine. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds. They felt almost surreal compared to everything happening inside me. When I stepped into the kitchen, she didn't look surprised to see me awake. She was already dressed, already composed. Like she had been preparing for this moment. "Sit," she said, without turning around. I hesitated for just a second before doing what she asked. She placed a cup of coffee in front of me, then leaned against the counter, arms crossed again. The same posture, the same distance. "We're going to talk now," she said. "Not are you okay? Not how are you feeling? Just that." I nodded slowly, because I knew this wasn't going away. Not until she got the answers she wanted. "Start from the beginning," she said. I stared at the surface of the table, tracing a small scratch with my fingertip. Where do you even begin when everything feels like it happened all at once? "I told you," I said quietly. "I left." She exhaled sharply. "No." "You keep saying that like it explains anything." Her voice tightened. "What happened in that house?" I swallowed. And for a moment, I almost told her everything. Almost. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she was looking at me. Maybe it was the way she had already decided what kind of person I was. Or maybe it was the realization that once I said it out loud, everything would become even more real. He wasn't who I thought he was. I said instead. She frowned slightly. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I paused, searching for words that didn't feel like they were breaking me open. "It means I found out something I couldn't stay for." Her expression shifted, not to understanding, but to suspicion. "Something," she repeated. "Or someone." The question hung there, heavy and deliberate. I looked up at her. "You already made up your mind." "Didn't you?" She didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. "You disappeared in the middle of the night," she said after a moment. "No call. No explanation. You show up pregnant. Looking like that?" She gestured vaguely toward me. "And you expect me to think this is simple?" "I never said it was simple." "Then explain it." Her voice was sharper now, pushing harder. I felt something inside me tighten. Something that had been holding everything together up until now. "I heard him," I said suddenly. The words came out before I could stop them. Her expression changed slightly. "Heard him?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "On the phone. Talking to someone?" My fingers curled slightly against the table, saying things that didn't make sense. Things he never said to me. She tilted her head, watching me carefully now. "And that's enough for you to run away?" "It wasn't just what he said," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. It was how he said it. Like I didn't exist. Like everything we had was just something temporary. She didn't speak. So I continued. "I didn't need proof," I said quietly. "I didn't need to see anything. I just knew." Knew. That word felt heavier than anything else. Because once you know, you can't unknow it. You can't go back to pretending. "You're telling me you left your entire life over a feeling," she said finally. There it was again. Doubt. Judgment. The quiet assumption that I had made the wrong choice. "It wasn't just a feeling," I said. "It sounds like one." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut just as deep anyway. I looked down again, my thoughts slipping into something darker. Fragments of that night came back to me in flashes. His voice. Low, distant, unfamiliar. The way he laughed, soft. Controlled. Nothing like the man I thought I knew. The name. I hadn't even realized how much that one detail mattered until now, because it wasn't a name I recognized. Not a coworker, not a friend, not anyone he had ever mentioned. And that was when everything shifted. Not exploded, not shattered, just shifted, like the ground beneath me had quietly given way. And I was already falling before I realized it. "You didn't confront him?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. Why not?" Because I didn't need to. Because whatever answer he gave me wouldn't change what I had already heard. Because some truths don't need confirmation. They wouldn't have been honest answers, I said simply. She let out a slow breath, running a hand through her hair. I don't understand you, she admitted. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was the first honest thing she had said since I got there. I know, I said softly, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. She studied me again, her gaze lingering a little longer this time, not softer, but different, as if she was trying to find something she had missed. You really think he was hiding something from you? She asked. I met her eyes. I know he was. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything else, because now it wasn't just about what I had done. It was about what might be true, and that was a much more uncomfortable possibility. But even as that thought settled between us, something else began to form in the back of my mind. A question I hadn't allowed myself to fully ask yet. How long had this been happening? And more importantly, how much of it had I completely missed? Because if I had been wrong about him, then what else had I been wrong about? I leaned back slightly, my hand resting protectively over my stomach again. And for the first time since I left that house, the fear I felt wasn't just about the future. It was about the past. Because something told me this story didn't start the night I walked away. It started long before that. I had just been the last person to realize it. I decided to stop explaining. There was no point. Every word I gave her only seemed to push her further into a version of the story where I was the problem, where I had overreacted, where everything could still be reduced to something simple and disappointing. And I was too tired to keep fighting that. So instead, I changed. Not who I was, but how I showed it. If she wanted someone fragile, I would let her see fragile. If she expected confusion, I would give her confusion. Because the truth was, I didn't need her to understand me right now. I needed time. And the only way to get that was to stop resisting. I don't know what to do, I said quietly, lowering my gaze. The shift was immediate. I saw it in her eyes. That sharp edge softened, not into kindness, but into something else. Control. She stepped closer, her tone changing, smoothing out. Well, of course you don't, she said, almost gently. You're not thinking clearly right now. I nodded slowly, letting my shoulders drop just a little more. I didn't think it would end like this. That part, at least, wasn't a lie, she sighed, pulling out a chair and sitting across from me. Okay, she said, leaning forward slightly. Then let's figure this out properly. Properly. The word lingered, like she had already decided what proper meant. You can't just disappear like that, she continued. There are consequences. People are going to ask questions. I know. And you being pregnant doesn't exactly make things easier. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach again. But this time, I let it linger there. A silent reminder. A vulnerability. She followed the gesture, her expression tightening slightly. Does he know? She asked. I shook my head. No. Her eyebrows lifted. You didn't even tell him. No. The word felt heavier than it should have. But I didn't explain. I didn't need to, because explaining would lead back to the same place. And I wasn't going there again. She leaned back in her chair. Studying me. That's not a small thing. Amanda. I know. Then why would you leave without telling him something like that? Because he didn't deserve to know. Because I didn't know who he really was anymore. Because telling him would mean giving him a chance to lie to me again. But I didn't say any of that. I just let the silence sit between us. And eventually, she filled it. Okay, she said finally, exhaling slowly. Then we need to think about this logically. Logically. Another word that sounded reasonable on the surface, but carried something else underneath. Right now, you don't have a plan, she continued. You don't have stability. You don't even have a place of your own. Each statement landed like a quiet confirmation of everything I already knew. And whether you like it or not, you're not in a position to handle this alone. There it was. The shift. From concern to authority. I kept my eyes down, letting the words sink in, letting her believe they were working. "What do you think I should do?" I asked softly. Her answer came almost too quickly. "You stay here," she said. "At least for now." I nodded. "That makes sense. And we figure everything out step by step. Another subtle shift. I didn't miss it. "I can help you," she added. "But you have to be honest with me." Completely honest. I looked up at her, meeting her eyes for just a second, long enough to let her believe I was considering it. Then I nodded again. "I will." It wasn't the truth, but it was what she needed to hear. She relaxed slightly, as if something had just been resolved. "Good," she said. "Because this situation is already complicated enough." Complicated? That was one way to describe it. I almost wondered how she would describe it if she knew everything. If she knew what I had heard. If she knew what I had walked away from. But she didn't. And for now, that was my advantage. "First thing," she continued, slipping fully into that controlled, structured tone. "We need to think about what you're going to say if anyone asks." I stayed quiet, watching, listening, learning. "You can't just say you felt something was wrong," she said. "People don't respond well to that. It sounds unstable." Unstable. The word hung in the air. Carefully chosen. Deliberate. "So what should I say?" I asked. She leaned back slightly, thinking. "You say things didn't work out," she said. "That you needed space. Keep it simple. Don't go into details." I nodded slowly. "That sounds easier." "It is easier," she replied. "And right now, easier is what you need." Easier for who? The question stayed in my head. Unspoken. She stood up, walking toward the counter again. "I'll make some calls later," she added. "See what options we have." Options. Plans. Decisions. All moving forward, with her at the center of them. And me, just following along. Exactly where she wanted me. I watched her for a moment, taking in the way she moved. The confidence in her posture. The certainty in her voice. This wasn't hesitation. This wasn't confusion. This was someone stepping into a role she was already comfortable with. And that realization settled quietly in my chest. She wasn't reacting to my situation. She was adapting to it faster than she should have been. I lowered my gaze again, letting my expression soften, letting the exhaustion show. But inside, something had shifted. Not in the way she thought. Not into weakness. Into clarity. Because now I understood something I hadn't fully seen before. This wasn't just about what I had lost. It was about what everyone else thought they had gained. Control. Position. Authority. And the more they believed they had it, the less careful they would be. "I'll go lie down for a bit," I said quietly, pushing myself up from the chair. "Yeah," she replied without looking at me. "You should rest." I nodded, turning toward the hallway. But as I walked away, I didn't feel smaller. I didn't feel lost. I felt aware. Because for the first time since I left that house, I wasn't just reacting to what was happening to me. I was watching it happen. And that changed everything. They thought they were guiding me. But what they didn't realize was that I had already started paying attention. She brought the folder out after breakfast. Not immediately. Not in a rushed or obvious way. She waited until things felt normal again, until I had eaten a little, until the tension from the night before had settled into something quieter, more manageable. Then she placed it on the table like it had always been part of the plan. "I thought we could start organizing things," she said casually, sliding into the chair across from me. "Organizing," such a harmless word. I nodded, keeping my expression soft. "Uncertain. Okay?" She opened the folder carefully, revealing neatly arranged documents, clipped and labeled with small tabs. Everything looked clean, controlled, prepared. Too prepared. "These are just temporary," she added, as if reading my thoughts. Nothing complicated. Just to make sure things don't fall apart while you're figuring everything out. While I'm figuring everything out, I lowered my gaze to the papers, scanning the first page without letting it seem like I was really reading it. But I was. Every word, every line, carefully. It's mostly just authorization. She continued. Basic stuff. So I can help manage things for you. Help. That word again. It almost sounded comforting. If you didn't listen too closely. I don't really understand all of this, I said quietly, letting my voice tremble just enough. That was enough to make her lean in slightly, her tone softening. Of course you don't, she said. You're not supposed to. That's why I'm here. I nodded slowly, as if relieved. But inside, something sharpened. I let my eyes drift across the page again. Power of attorney. Financial authority. Temporary control. The words were simple, but the meaning underneath them wasn't. This wasn't about helping. This was about replacing my decisions. Replacing my control. Replacing me. It's just until you're stable again, she added quickly, watching my face. You don't have to deal with any of this right now. I hesitated, not because I didn't understand, but because I needed her to believe that I didn't. What happens if I don't sign? I asked softly. It was a small question. Simple. But I saw it. That flicker. Just for a second. Before she covered it. Well, then everything stays in your name, she said carefully. Which means you'd have to handle all of it yourself. She paused, then added gently, and I don't think that's what you want right now. No, that wasn't what she wanted. I could feel it. The subtle pressure building beneath her calm tone. The expectation. The need. You don't trust me, she asked suddenly. There it was. The emotional shift. I looked up quickly, shaking my head. No, it's not that. Then what is it? She pressed. I let the silence stretch just long enough to feel real. I'm just overwhelmed, I said finally. And that part was true. Just not in the way she thought. She exhaled slowly, leaning back slightly. I get it, she said. I really do. But this is exactly why you shouldn't be doing this alone. Alone. Another carefully chosen word. You need someone who understands how this works. Someone like her. That was the message. Clear. Quiet. Persistent. I looked back down at the papers, my fingers resting lightly against the edge of the table. I already knew what this was. I already knew what it meant. And more importantly, I knew she needed me to sign. So I made a decision. Not out of fear. Not out of confusion. But out of something far more controlled. I would give her exactly what she wanted. Just not for the reasons she thought. Okay, I said quietly. The word hung in the air for a second. Her posture shifted immediately. A subtle release of tension. Relief. I'll sign, I added. That was all it took. She straightened slightly, trying to keep her expression neutral, but I saw it. That small, almost invisible moment of satisfaction, like something had just clicked into place. Good, she said, her voice smoother now. This will make everything easier. Easier. For her. She slid the pen across the table toward me. And suddenly, everything slowed down. The weight of it. The finality. Not because I didn't understand what I was doing, but because I understood it perfectly. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled slightly. Not entirely an act. Just controlled. Measured. She watched me closely. Waiting. Holding her breath in a way she probably didn't even realize. I signed. One line. Then another. Each stroke of the pen sealing something she believed was control. Something she believed she had just taken from me. When I finished, I set the pen down carefully. She reached for the papers almost immediately, flipping through them, checking each signature with quick, practiced movements, and there it was again. That flicker. That quiet sense of victory. Everything's good, she said, stacking the documents neatly. We'll start sorting things out right away. Of course she would. Because now she could. I leaned back slightly, letting my shoulders relax, letting the exhaustion return to my expression. But inside, something else settled in its place. Because she thought this was the moment she gained control. She thought this was the beginning of her plan working exactly as intended. But what she didn't realize was that the moment I signed those papers was the moment I stepped inside her plan. And once I was inside, I could see everything. The change didn't happen all at once. It was subtle, quiet, almost unnoticeable if you weren't paying attention. But at first, it was just the way she spoke. Less, do you want to? And more, I'll handle that. Less asking. More deciding. I've already taken care of it. You don't need to worry about that anymore. Small sentences. Simple shifts. But they added up by the third day. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was clear. She moved through the house differently. Not like someone helping. Like someone who belonged there. Like someone who had already claimed something that wasn't hers. I spoke to the bank this morning, she said one afternoon, scrolling through her phone as she stood near the window. I looked up from the couch, keeping my expression soft. Oh, okay. They needed some clarification on a few things, she continued. Nothing serious? Just routine. Routine. I nodded slowly. What kind of things? She waved a hand lightly. Just account structure. Transfers. It's all under control. Under control. Her words were always so carefully chosen. Simple enough to reassure. Vague enough to hide everything. I didn't push. Not yet. Instead, I watched, listened, waited. That night, after she went to bed, I moved quietly through the living room, stopping at the table where she had left a few papers behind. Careless. That was new. Or maybe just the beginning. I sat down slowly, pulling the documents closer. Statements. Summaries. Account references. The kind of things most people would glance at and ignore. But I didn't ignore them. I traced the numbers with my eyes. One transaction. Then another. Then another. At first glance, they looked normal. Nothing large. Nothing dramatic. Just small movements. Consistent. Repeated. Too consistent. My fingers tightened slightly against the paper. Because patterns don't lie. People do just moving things around. Her words echoed in my head. Simplifying the structure. That's what she had said. But this wasn't simplification. This was extraction. I leaned back slightly, my mind already connecting the pieces. The amounts. The timing. The accounts involved. And then I saw it. A name. Not familiar. Not directly linked to anything obvious. But it appeared more than once. That was enough. I memorized it. Every letter. Every detail. Then carefully placed the papers back exactly where they had been. By the time I returned to the couch, my heart was beating faster. Not from fear. From certainty. This wasn't random. This wasn't temporary. And it definitely wasn't help. The next morning, I tested her. I was looking at some of the accounts, I said casually, keeping my tone light. She froze. Just for a second. Then turned toward me. You were what? Her voice was calm. Too calm. I didn't understand something, I added quickly. I just wanted to ask. That seemed to relax her. Slightly. You don't need to worry about that, she said. Stepping closer. That's exactly why I'm handling it. I know, I said, nodding. I just saw a transfer I didn't recognize. There it was again. That pause. Short. Sharp. Gone in an instant. Oh, that, she said. That's just a holding account. A holding account. Yeah, she replied smoothly. Temporary? It makes everything easier to manage. Easier. I nodded again. Okay. I didn't question it further. I didn't need to, because her answer wasn't important. Her reaction was that hesitation, that slight tightening in her voice. That was real. And it told me everything I needed to know. Over the next 2 days, things started moving faster. Not outwardly. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But I saw it. The transactions became slightly larger. Less spaced out. Less careful. Pressure was building. I could feel it. And she could feel it too. She checked her phone more often. Stayed up later. Closed doors more carefully. But not carefully enough. Because every time she moved, every time she acted, she left something behind. A detail. A pattern. A mistake. And I collected all of it. Not physically. Not yet. But in my mind. Piece by piece. It wasn't just about proving what she was doing. It was about understanding how far it went. Because this wasn't just money. This was a system. A structure. Something that had been built over time. And the more I watched, the more I realized something that unsettled me more than anything else. This didn't start after I left. This didn't start when I signed those papers. This didn't even start the night I heard his voice on that phone call. This had been happening before. Long before. The thought hit me harder than I expected. Because it meant one thing. I hadn't just walked into betrayal. I had been living inside it. I sat alone that night. The house quiet around me. My hand resting over my stomach again. Steady. Grounding. Real. I'm going to figure this out, I whispered. Not just what she was doing. Not just how deep this went. But everything. Because the truth was no longer something I was afraid of. It was something I needed. And now, I was finally starting to see it. The first real mistake she made wasn't the transfer. It wasn't the account. It wasn't even the hesitation in her voice. It was arrogance. It showed in the way she stopped checking over her shoulder. In the way she left her phone face up on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. That morning, she had stepped out to take a call. Not unusual. But she didn't take her phone with her. That was unusual. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. A simple object. Black screen. Silent. But it wasn't just a phone. It was access. I moved slowly, carefully, as if the air itself might betray me. Every step measured, every sound controlled. My fingers hovered above the screen for half a second before I picked it up. No lock. No hesitation. No second chance. The screen lit up instantly. Messages. I didn't scroll wildly. Didn't panic. Didn't rush. I had learned something over the past few days. Rushing leads to mistakes. And I couldn't afford mistakes. Instead, I opened the most recent thread. A name I didn't recognize. But I didn't need to. Because the tone said everything. Another batch cleared. Keep it under the threshold. We're almost done. My chest tightened. Not from shock. Not anymore. From confirmation. I scrolled slowly, absorbing each line like evidence already sealed in a case file. This has to be finished before she notices. She won't. Are you sure? She doesn't even understand what she signed. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Signed. The word echoed in my mind like a gunshot. This wasn't just about transfers. This wasn't just about money moving quietly in the background. This was planned, structured, designed. And I had been part of it. Without knowing, I forced myself to keep scrolling. Names appeared. Fragments of conversations. References to accounts I had never seen. Numbers that didn't match anything she had shown me. And then I saw it. A document. Attached. I tapped it once. My heart steady but heavy. It opened instantly. A legal form. Clean. Official. My name? Right there. At the top. My signature at the bottom. But I didn't remember signing this. Not like this. Not knowingly. I scanned the contents quickly. Asset redistribution. Temporary authorization. Third-party access. My stomach tightened. Because it was all real. Legitimate. Technically. Just not honest. The wording was careful. Calculated. Designed to look harmless. But buried inside it was the truth. I had given permission. To someone else. To access everything. I closed the document slowly. My breathing controlled. This wasn't theft. Not in the way most people would understand it. This was something worse. Because it was legal. Or at least, it looked that way. Footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway. I froze. For half a second. Then moved. Fast. I placed the phone exactly where it had been. Screen down. Angle unchanged. Then stepped away. By the time she walked back in, I was already seated, one hand resting lightly on my stomach, the other holding a glass of water. Calm. Still. Unaware. She glanced at me briefly. Then at the phone. Then back at me. Just a flicker. But I saw it. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. Just resting. She picked up her phone, her eyes scanning the screen quickly. Too quickly. Then she smiled. A small smile. Controlled. Careful. Good, she said. But her voice had changed. Just slightly. Because somewhere, deep down, she knew something had shifted. Even if she didn't know what. The rest of the day passed quietly. Too quietly. She stayed closer than usual. Watched me more carefully. Spoke less. And I let her. Because the balance had changed. She thought she was in control. But now, I understood the system. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. Enough to know where to look. Enough to know what mattered. That night, after she went to bed, I didn't search for papers. I didn't move through the house. I stayed still. Thinking, replaying everything I had seen. Every message. Every word. Keep it under the threshold. Before she notices, she doesn't understand. They weren't just stealing. They were counting on my ignorance. On my silence. On my trust. And for a long time, they had been right. I leaned back slowly. My eyes fixed on the ceiling. But things were different now. Because I did understand, not everything, but enough to stop being the person they thought I was. My hand rested over my stomach again. A quiet habit. A reminder. I'm not going to let them take this, I whispered. Not just the money. Not just the house. Everything. Because this wasn't just about loss anymore. It was about control. And for the first time since the funeral, I was starting to take it back. The moment you realize the truth isn't the moment everything changes. It's the moment you stop pretending it hasn't already. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because confrontation is loud, messy, uncontrolled. And right now, I needed control. So I did something she never expected. I let her believe she was winning. The next morning, I acted softer, slower, more dependent. I'm glad you're here, I said quietly as she handed me a cup of tea. She paused, just slightly, then smiled. Of course. You need someone to take care of things. Take care of things. I nodded, lowering my eyes just enough to make it believable. I don't think I could handle all of this alone. There it was. The shift. Her shoulders relaxed. Her movements became easier. Lighter. Because weakness makes people careless. And I needed her careless. Over the next 2 days, I leaned into that role. I asked fewer questions. I stopped mentioning the accounts. I let her explain things without interrupting. And slowly, she started talking more. Not directly. Not openly. But enough. I'm consolidating a few things, she said one afternoon, flipping through documents at the table. It's just easier if everything flows through one place. One place? I asked softly. Yeah, she replied, not looking at me. Cleaner. More efficient. Cleaner. Efficient. Words that sounded good. Until you looked at what they were hiding. I watched her from across the room, memorizing the rhythm of her movements. When she checked her phone, when she made calls, when she closed the door. Patterns. Everything comes down to patterns. That night, I didn't wait. I followed one. She stepped outside again. Another call. Another private conversation. This time, she took her phone. But she left something else behind. Her laptop. Open. Unlocked. Careless. I moved toward it slowly, my pulse steady, my thoughts sharp. This was the moment. I sat down, the screen glowing softly in the dim light. Emails, folders, files, organized, structured, too organized. I opened the most recent folder. Transactions. Spreadsheets filled the screen. Columns of numbers. Dates. Accounts. My eyes scanned quickly, filtering out noise, focusing on what mattered. There it was again. That same unfamiliar name. Repeated. Linked. Central. Not a side account. Not temporary. Primary. My breathing slowed as the realization settled in. This wasn't about moving money. This was about redirecting it. Building something parallel. Something hidden. Something that didn't include me. I opened another file. This one labeled differently. Projected distribution. Projected. Future. My fingers hovered for a second before I clicked. The numbers were bigger. Cleaner. Final. And my name? Barely there. A fraction. A token. Enough to make it look fair. Not enough to matter. My chest tightened. But my face remained still. Because anger would come later. Right now, I needed clarity. I copied everything I could. Quickly. Carefully. Not to a device. Not to anything obvious. Just enough. Names. Numbers. Structures. Stored. Locked. In my mind. Footsteps. Closer this time. I closed the files instantly. Returned everything exactly as it had been. By the time she stepped back inside, I was standing by the window, staring out as if I had been there the whole time. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. Just thinking. About what? I turned slightly, offering a small, tired smile. Everything. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Don't worry," she said. "I've got it under control." Under control. The same words. Again. But now they sounded different. Now they sounded like a threat. That night, I didn't sit in silence. I didn't replay conversations. I didn't question what I had seen. Because there was nothing left to question. Only one thing left to decide. How I was going to stop it? Because this wasn't just happening around me anymore. It was happening to me. And for the first time since this started, I had enough pieces to see the whole picture. The accounts. The structure. The plan. And most importantly, the weakness. Every system has one. Every plan has a point where it can break. You just have to find it. I sat there, my hand resting lightly over my stomach again, grounding myself in something real. "They think I don't understand," I whispered. "They think I'm still the same person. The one who signed papers without reading. The one who trusted without questioning. They think I'm still behind. But I'm not. Not anymore. Because now, I'm watching them. And soon, they're going to realize exactly what that means. Control isn't taken in one move. It's taken in small, precise decisions no one notices until it's too late. I didn't rush. That was the first rule I set for myself. Because rushing would turn this into a reaction, and I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. The next morning, I changed something subtle, something she wouldn't question. "I was thinking," I said quietly over breakfast, my voice softer than usual. "Maybe we should slow down a bit." She looked up, surprised. "Slow down." "With everything," I added. "The accounts, the transfers, it's a lot." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "Not suspicion. Calculation. It has to be done," she replied. "The sooner, the better." "I know," I said, nodding. I don't understand it the way you do." There it was again. That shift. She leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxing. "Exactly," she said. "That's why I'm handling it." I let silence settle between us. "Just long enough? Maybe," I said slowly, "we could review things together before anything big happens." Her expression didn't change immediately, but I saw it. The hesitation, The risk assessment. Why? She asked. One word. Sharp. Because it makes me feel better, I replied, meeting her eyes briefly before looking away. I just want to know where everything is going. That was the key. Not control. Not authority. Emotion. Something she could dismiss. Something she could underestimate. She exhaled quietly. Fine, she said. But there's nothing to worry about. Of course there wasn't. That's what people say when there's everything to worry about. The first step was done. Access. Not full. Not yet. But enough. That afternoon, she sat across from me with her laptop open, scrolling through files, explaining, summarizing, controlling the narrative. These are just temporary reallocations, she said, pointing at the screen. Everything will stabilize once it's finalized. Finalized. I nodded, listening carefully, not to what she said, but to what she skipped, because people always skip the truth. What about that account? I asked gently, pointing to the name I had memorized. There it was. That flicker again. That's just an intermediary, she replied quickly. It won't stay like that. How long? A pause. Not long. Not long. Vague. Uncommitted. I nodded again, pretending to accept it. But inside, I was mapping everything. Every account she showed me, every number she mentioned, every gap she tried to cover. Because now, I wasn't just observing, I was documenting. That night, I made my first move. A small one. Invisible. I accessed one of the accounts she had shown me earlier. Not the main one. Not the obvious one. A secondary line. Something she thought I wouldn't notice. I didn't transfer money. I didn't block anything. I just changed one thing. A notification setting. So that every movement, no matter how small, would reach me first. Not her. Me. Then I stepped back. Waited. Because systems reveal themselves when they move. And I needed to see how hers would react. The next morning, it happened. A transaction. Small. Careful. But it triggered the notification. My phone lit up silently in my hand. There it was. Proof. Timing. Amount. Destination. Everything she thought I wouldn't see. Across the room. She checked her phone. Once, then again. Her expression tightened. Just slightly. Because something didn't match. Something had shifted. Did you see that? She asked casually, trying to keep her tone even. I looked up slowly. See what? She hesitated, then smiled. Nothing. Just a system delay. System delay. I nodded. Okay. But I saw it. The tension. The uncertainty. Because for the first time, her system wasn't fully under her control, and she felt it. Over the next few hours, it happened again. Another transaction. Another delay. Another crack. Each one small. Each one harmless. But together, unsettling. That night, she didn't sleep easily. I could hear it. The movement. The restlessness. Because control isn't just about what you have. It's about what you think you have. And now, she wasn't sure anymore. I lay there in the dark, my eyes open, my thoughts clear. This was just the beginning. A test. A way to see how far I could push without being seen. And it worked. Because she was already reacting. Already adjusting. Already questioning things she thought were certain. My hand rested over my stomach again. Steady and calm. They're going to make a mistake, I whispered. Not because they're careless, but because I'm changing the game. One move at a time. Quiet. Precise. Invisible. And by the time they realize what's happening, it won't be something they can fix. Pressure doesn't break a system immediately. It exposes where it's already weak. By the third day, the changes were impossible to ignore. Not for her. And definitely not for me. She moved differently now. Faster. Less confident. Like someone trying to stay ahead of something they couldn't quite see. Have you noticed anything strange? she asked that morning, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. I looked up from my tea, letting a slight pause settle before answering. Strange how she hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then shrugged. Just delays. Minor issues. I nodded slowly. Maybe the bank. Maybe, she said. But her tone didn't match the word. Because she knew. This wasn't the bank. And I knew she knew. That was the balance now. Neither of us said it. But both of us understood. That afternoon, I pushed a little further. Not directly. Never directly. I was thinking, I said as she worked at the table, her laptop open again, her fingers moving faster than usual. Maybe we should double-check everything before anything final goes through. She didn't look up immediately. Everything is already being checked, she replied. I know, I said gently. I'd feel better if I saw it all clearly. That word again. Feel. She leaned back slightly, exhaling. You're worrying too much. Maybe, I admitted. But it's everything I have. That landed. I saw it. Because for a moment, she didn't respond. Then she nodded. Fine. We'll go through it again tonight. Another step. Another opening. That night, she showed me more than she intended. Not because she trusted me. Because she wanted to prove control. These are the main distributions, she said, scrolling through the files. Everything flows through here before it's finalized. I leaned closer. My expression focused but quiet. Numbers. Accounts. Structures. And there it was again. The central account. The one everything touched. The one she kept minimizing. What about that one? I asked softly, pointing. Her hand paused on the trackpad. That's just temporary, she said. Temporary? The same word. Again. How temporary? This time, she didn't answer immediately. A mistake. Because silence says more than words. It'll be closed once everything is processed, she said finally. Closed. Not returned. Not redistributed. Closed. I nodded, letting it pass. But inside, the picture became clearer. This wasn't just movement. This was consolidation. And once everything was there, it wouldn't move back. After she went to bed, I didn't wait. I went straight to the account. The central one, the core of everything she was building. I didn't try to access it directly. Not yet. Instead, I traced the connections, the secondary lines, the feeder accounts, and I found it a pathway. Not obvious, not direct, but real. A link she thought was too small to matter. I followed it carefully, step by step, my focus sharp, my breathing steady, until I reached the point where everything converged. The gateway, the place where control shifted. And for the first time, I saw how to take it back. Not by stopping her, not by confronting her, but by letting her finish. Letting everything move exactly where she wanted it to go. Because once it was all there, it would all be in one place. And that place would no longer be hers. I leaned back slowly, my mind already moving ahead. Timing, sequence, execution. It had to be perfect. No noise, no warning. Just one moment, one shift. And everything would change. The next morning, I was calmer than I had been in days. Because clarity brings something powerful. Certainty. She watched me closely as I moved through the kitchen. Noticing, measuring. You seem better, she said. I smiled faintly. I think I just needed time to process everything. She studied my face for a second longer than usual. Then nodded. Good, she said. But her voice was different now. Because something about me had changed. Even if she couldn't explain it. And that made her uneasy. Over the next 2 days, I didn't push. I didn't question. I didn't interfere. I let her move freely. Let her transfer. Let her consolidate. Let her believe she had regained control. Because the closer she got to finishing, the less careful she became. And that was exactly what I needed. That night, I stood alone in the living room, the house silent around me, my hand resting lightly over my stomach again. Steady. Grounded. It's almost done, I whispered. Not her plan. Mine. Because now, I wasn't just reacting. I was waiting. For the exact moment when everything she built would become everything she lost. The final stage of a plan doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet. Too quiet. That's how I knew it was time. She didn't say it out loud. She didn't have to. I saw it in the way she stopped double-checking things. In the way her movements became smoother again. Confident. Like someone who believed the hardest part was over. And she was right. Just not in the way she thought. That morning, she moved through the house with a calm I hadn't seen in days. No tension. No hesitation. I think we're almost done, she said casually, pouring herself coffee. Almost. I looked up slowly. That's good, right? She smiled. Yes. Very good. Very good. I nodded, keeping my expression soft. Then everything will finally be settled. Exactly, she replied. Settled. That word lingered in the air longer than it should have. Because to her, it meant completion. To me, it meant opportunity. The rest of the day passed like any other. Ordinary. Predictable. She made a few calls. Checked a few accounts. Sent a few messages. Routine. But I could feel it. Everything was converging. Everything was moving toward one place. And that place was exactly where I needed it to be. That night, after she went to bed, I didn't hesitate. No more waiting. No more testing. This was the moment. I sat down with my phone. My mind clear. My movements precise. I opened the account. The central one. The one everything now flowed through. And for the first time, I didn't just observe it. I controlled it. The pathway I had found. The connection she had overlooked. It was still there. Still open. Still mine to use. My fingers hovered over the screen for a second. Not from doubt. From focus. Because this had to be exact. No mistakes. No second chances. I began. Step by step. Quiet. Careful. I didn't move everything at once. That would trigger alerts. Raise questions. Instead, I broke it down. Fragments. Pieces small enough to blend in. Large enough to matter. Each transfer calculated. Each movement deliberate. Not away. Not yet. Just redirected. Repositioned. Restructured. By the time the first sequence was complete, nothing looked different on the surface. The balances were still there. The totals still matched. But underneath, everything had changed. I leaned back slightly, my breathing steady. That was the first layer. The second was simpler. Control. I adjusted permissions. Subtle changes. Invisible shifts. Access points moved. Notifications rerouted. So that every action from this point forward would come through me first, not her. Then I stopped. Because knowing when to stop is just as important as knowing when to act. The rest would happen naturally, because systems follow their own logic. And hers was already set in motion. The next morning, I waited, silently, patiently. It didn't take long. Her phone buzzed. Once, then again. She frowned, glancing down at the screen. Then again. Her expression tightened. Just slightly. What is it? I asked, keeping my tone light. She shook her head quickly. Nothing. Just updates. Updates. I nodded. Okay. But I saw it. The hesitation. Because something didn't line up. Something wasn't where she expected it to be. She checked again. Scrolled. Paused. Then stood up abruptly. I need to make a call. Of course she did. I watched as she walked out. Her steps faster than usual. Controlled. But not calm. Not anymore. Minutes passed. Then more. When she came back, her face had changed. Not panic. Not yet. But uncertainty. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated, then forced a smile. Just a minor issue. Minor? I nodded. Those happen? She didn't respond. Because she knew. This wasn't minor. This was the beginning. Over the next few hours, it escalated. More alerts. More inconsistencies. More gaps she couldn't explain. And with every one, her control slipped. Just a little more. That night, she didn't pretend. She didn't hide it. What did you do? She asked suddenly, her voice low, sharp. I looked at her calmly. What do you mean? Her eyes locked onto mine. Something changed. I held her gaze, unmoved. Things change, I said quietly. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, charged. You don't understand what you're dealing with, she said. That made me smile. Just slightly, don't I? For the first time since this began. She didn't have an answer. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because control isn't about who moves first. It's about who understands the system. And now, that was me. I stood there, steady, grounded, my hand resting lightly over my stomach once more. Not afraid. Not uncertain. Just ready. Because whatever she thought she had built was no longer hers. And by the time she realized exactly how much she had lost, there would be nothing left for her to take back. The moment everything collapses isn't loud. It's precise. Final. By morning, she wasn't pretending anymore. There was no calm, no careful tone, no controlled movements, only urgency. She was already on the phone when I walked into the kitchen, pacing, whispering, demanding answers she wasn't getting. That's not possible, she said sharply. Check it again. I poured myself a glass of water, slow and steady, as if none of it had anything to do with me. But it had everything to do with me. She turned, her eyes locking onto mine for a brief second before she looked away, because now she knew. Not everything, but enough. She ended the call abruptly. What did you do? She asked again, her voice tighter this time, less controlled. I met her gaze without hesitation. I stopped trusting you. The silence that followed was different from before. Not tense, not uncertain, broken. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head. This isn't something you can just interfere with. I know exactly what it is, I replied calmly. Her expression shifted. Not anger, not yet. Fear. Because for the first time, she realized I wasn't guessing anymore. You signed those documents, she said quickly. Everything I did was authorized. Authorized. I nodded slowly. Yes, it was, she exhaled, as if that confirmed something, as if she could still win. But authorization doesn't mean control, I continued. That's when it hit her. Not all at once, but enough. You moved it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because she already knew. She grabbed her phone again, dialing faster this time, her voice rising with every word. No. Listen to me, everything was supposed to be there. It was all consolidated. She stopped, listening, her face drained of color, because whatever she was hearing wasn't what she expected. I turned away, walking slowly toward the window, letting the silence behind me grow heavier, because this wasn't about proving anything. It was about ending it. Minutes passed, then more, when she finally spoke again. Her voice was different, not sharp, not controlled, defeated. Where is it? She asked quietly. I didn't turn around. Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. She let out a short, bitter breath. You think you've won. I faced her then. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just certain this was never about winning. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then what is it about? I held her gaze, steady and unshaken. Understanding. That confused her. I saw it. Because she had been playing a different game the entire time. One about control, power, Possession. But she had missed something. Something simple. Something important. You thought I didn't know what I signed, I said quietly. You thought I wouldn't look, wouldn't question, wouldn't learn. Her jaw tightened. You were wrong. The words hung in the air between us. Heavy. Irreversible. Because this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about everything that led to it. The trust. The deception. The assumption that I would stay exactly who I had been. I took a slow breath, my hand resting lightly over my stomach once more. A reminder. Not of weakness, but of what mattered. You built a system, I continued. Careful. Smart. Hidden. She didn't deny it. Couldn't. But you forgot something. I said, what? That systems only work when no one else understands them. Silence. Deep. Complete. Because now she understood. Not just what I had done, but how, and more importantly, why. There's nothing left for you to take, I said finally. No anger. No raised voice. Just truth. She stood there, motionless, her hands tightening at her sides. For a moment, I thought she might say something. Fight. Argue. Demand. But she didn't. Because there was nothing left to fight for. And for the first time since this began, neither of us moved. Because it was over. Not with a crash. Not with chaos. But with something far more permanent. Clarity. I turned away, walking slowly out of the room, leaving her standing there with everything she had built. Gone. The house felt different now. Lighter. Quieter. Like something heavy had finally been removed. I stepped outside, the air cool against my skin. The world beyond the door still moving like nothing had changed. But everything had. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing it in, then opened them again. Because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Something I would control. Something I would understand. Something no one else would ever take from me again. And if you've ever trusted someone who thought you wouldn't notice, if you've ever been underestimated, then you already know this feeling. The moment when everything shifts. The moment when you stop being the one who reacts and become the one who decides. If this story made you think or reminded you of something you've experienced, stay with me. There's always more beneath the surface. And sometimes, the truth you uncover next changes everything. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.